I don't want to sit with them.
Well, you don't have to. You need to sit between Jill and Jeannie, the two J's. Oh, 3 in a row, Jill. You're going to be jaded. What a nerd.
He already is that.
Al and Julian.
Jaded.
I was watching my family bake cookies all day yesterday, thinking, I really ought to just go hang out in the fellowship hall now, because we had a bunch of those there today. Lovely, lovely, lovely. I'm going to get started with announcements, maybe a few announcements, not too much. We're in this kind of odd December time when the Sunday school kids do their opening in the sanctuary because they're practicing for the Christmas service along the way. So everything's slightly discombobulated as it is. But, you know, we do discombobulate it pretty well. On December 23rd, so not this next Sunday, but the Sunday after, December 23rd, we are having a quick voters meeting. I know what you're thinking. Quick and voters meeting don't often go together. But in this case, it should be. All we're doing at this meeting is designating how much of my salary, the deaconess's salary, are designated for housing allowance. We meant to do it at the November meeting and just got sidetracked from it. It doesn't actually have any numbers impact on anything. It's just what percentage of my income is counted for tax purposes on housing allowance. But got to happen from the voters, so we shall do so. On the 23rd, we'll just do that at the very beginning of Bible class on the 23rd. We are continuing our Advent meditations on Away in a Manger. Did anybody remember how many melodies I said have been written for Away in the Manger? 41. Isn't that crazy? 41. We think of one or maybe two, and if you're really adventurous, maybe 3. But yeah, there are a boatload, and we're going to sing all of them. No, we won't. Yeah, in succession, we're going to go over and over again. No, most of them are terrible, as you would expect, but that's okay. So Wednesday, next Sunday, we have the grand annual Higher Things Christmas cookie and candy sale. We've done this, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, maybe something like that. Yes, you can see Miriam modeling the poster over there. Thank you very much. And for those of you who are newish, basically what happens is we have a bunch of the families that send kids to the Higher Things Youth Conference in the summers, bake Christmas cookies, and you can buy them by the pound or by the plate. They'll have some pre-made plates, and they are super good. We've had a grand time doing those for a number of years. Have I forgotten anything on that, Miriam? Anything to add?
I just wanted to add something.
Please.
Last year I made my Noni's pound cake, and I think some people were like, I don't know what that tastes like, and I didn't buy it. So this year I sampled it out today during.
I had it and it was great.
Yeah, there you go.
So,
testify.
I'm prepared to make as many as you want, but I'm passing around a little sign-up sheet.
Gotcha.
And there's little dates if you want it later than next week, so it's closer to Christmas. So yes, we are charging $20, but all the proceeds are going to Higher Things.
Yep.
So I'm going to pass that around. I don't have a pen. You want a pen on you? No.
And for those of you who did not know, Miriam is a super amazing baker.
Certified pastry chef.
Certified pastry chef. Lots of, certified, certifiable, something like that. Yes, absolutely. So that could go around. Diane, did you have something to add to that?
I was wondering if she made provisions for perhaps buying half.
Buying half. That you can negotiate with her.
Buying half. Yeah, just
I mean, if there were 2 people that wanted half, then, you know.
Just write half on it. On it, and we can figure it out.
And a half will be $19, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that how it works in retail?
And it is in the worship folder, but other announcements, 6 o'clock today, yeah.
6 o'clock today.
Concert, starring Peperkorn. And,
Starring is overstating it a bit.
yeah, it's Winds of Faith at St. Augustine, the Canterbury Episcopal Church on Wildcat in Rockland. 6 o'clock, Christmas concert.
Here you go. Marianne and then Gloria.
Since we're talking about music, this coming Friday, the 14th, there will be a very fine performance of the Messiah at the Cathedral of Blessed Sacrament, in Sacramento, which is a very, very beautiful space. So it will be with orchestra and professional soloists, and I highly recommend it. There's a poster on the board, and you can order your tickets ahead because it might sell out.
There you
What
go.
time is it?
You remember what time it's
Do I
at?
remember what time it is? I think it's probably 7:30.
Have to look at the poster. to
Yeah,
make
I
sure.
don't remember all these things.
Gloria.
Just a reminder that tomorrow night, our preschool academy kids are singing in the church, and it will be full, but if some of you are able to come and see our little kids, they're awesome.
It's always a fun
And
time.
a great time to socialize with parents from the academy.
Wonderful.
time?
Thank you.
Oh, and it's at 6 o'clock, thank you.
6 o'clock. All right. One of the things you'll find in the bulletin is a little blurb on properties update and some potential projects. I just wanted to draw your attention to it. You can take a look at that in a little bit more detail. We got a few projects that we haven't specifically designated or put in our capital campaign. They aren't, none of them are super big projects, but they're big enough that it's not just, grab some spare change and write a check. But you can take a look at those, some landscaping, we're looking at a sign, better chairs for the fellowship hall, better and especially easier to maneuver tables for the fellowship hall. For those of you that helped with setup and takedown for our Advent, we have those round tables, which I think may have been the cause for the sinking of the Titanic. I'm not sure. They are substantive, and they have definitely seen a lot of love over the years. So it is definitely time to retire those. So if you are interested in helping with any of these projects, you can mark at Holy Cross Property Improvements in the memo line, or talk to me, or talk to Norb Huber later on, and we'll work it from there. For parents, this went home last week, but Catherine asked that I just highlight it for all of you. We got a couple non-Sunday rehearsals, literally two. Saturday the 22nd and Monday the 24th. I would like to suggest that Monday morning is an excellent time for last minute shopping type other things, to drop your kids off for a couple hours and then come back. Also especially for our newer members, typically the way that we have done Christmas services, I'll talk about this in more detail next week, but our early service on Christmas is usually either our children's Christmas service or a lessons and carols service. That's kind of what that service is. The late service is a candlelight service, and we're calling it our midnight Central Time service. So it's at 10. It's at 10 o'clock. So 6 o'clock and 10 o'clock Christmas Eve, and Christmas Day is at 10:30. And that's our festival divine service with all sorts of fun stuff. So that's kind of the cycle of Christmas services. Anybody have any other announcements that I have forgotten or anything else? All right, now let's get to Matthew and figure out what we're doing. So we have finished the prayer in the garden, and now have moved on to the betrayal.
Dim the light a little bit.
Dim the lights a wee bit.
Dim the light.
We can try.
I think I already got it in the house.
All right, I'll see if I can dim them a little bit more. See if I know how to do that. Is that okay?
Yeah.
A little darker. That's okay? Yeah. As I said, we got this new screen this last week, thanks to an anonymous donor. We're still kind of playing around with figuring out what the best settings and stuff like that are. So we'll kind of play with that and see what we can come up with. All right, Matthew 26. While he, Jesus, was still speaking, Judas came, one of the 12, and with him a great crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now the betrayer had given them a sign, saying, "The one I will kiss is the man, seize him." And he came up to Jesus at once and said, "Greetings, Rabbi," and he kissed him. Jesus said to him, "Friend, do what you came to do." Then they came up and laid hands on Jesus and seized him. And behold, one of those who were with Jesus stretched out his hand and drew his sword and struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his ear. So, one of the things that kind of occurred to me in reflecting on this text was first off that there is a great crowd that comes with swords and with all of the rest from the chief priests. And so this is and a lot of times I think in art, we're going to look at a couple art pieces here in a minute. A lot of times in art, you'll see this with maybe a dozen, the 12 and a few soldiers. But this is a big kind of public thing. It is a public event that happens at this point. So that's kind of a big change that comes on. And here we get Judas's sort of title, Judas the betrayer. He is the betrayer. Although we'll find in a few minutes that while he may be the one who betrayed Jesus, that they all forsook him and fled. So while Judas is certainly singled out here, they are all at fault in one way or another. Boy, there's a lot that you could make of this betrayal with a kiss. And just to reflect on that for a moment, you have this sort of tragic contrast between a sign of affection that leads to a sign of violence. I mean, that's really that's the picture, that's the tension and contrast that you have here. And that it is no accident that later on you will find that that Paul, for instance, will talk about greet one another with the kiss of peace. That this is a sign of not simply affection, but a sign of love, of reconciliation, of everything being right between two people. And so for Judas to betray him with a kiss is, I think that's what the people in a drama class would call dramatic irony, something along those lines.
Great tragedy.
Yes, it is right. I mean, this is kind of epic tragedy, or tragedy of an epic proportion there. But it is, I would say, one of the most powerful pictures you get in in Jesus' passion is this betrayal that we have here. Any comments or questions on that? Yeah, Eric, and then Diane.
I have a question. Is that why Europeans always kiss one another when they greet one another?
Well, that is common in some cultures that to greet one another with a kiss, either a kiss on the cheeks or even full on the lips. It's common in some cultures. I don't think that I would say that this is a cause. I would say that this is kind of in parallel. That this is a common greeting that has continued, Judas notwithstanding. Diane, and then Paul.
I was always wondering if he decided the kiss in the hope that he would fool Jesus that it wasn't really him. And then Jesus stripped it away with friend, do what you came to do.
Right. And that is, I mean, I guess it's dark, but it's not that dark. I mean, they come with torches and so, I mean, there's no question of who is acting here. So I don't think that this is a deception, but is simply this is the sign that this is the guy. It is but I agree, it is a bit of a strange sort of scene. Why doesn't he just point to him? or something like that. Why this specific greeting? I think it's good. Paul, and then Dennis, and then Rick.
So by this time, Jesus had been preaching for like 3 years.
Yep.
Throughout the country. He came in a donkey just, days before.
Yep.
He wasn't exactly hiding.
Nope.
Why did he have to come up and kiss him? Why didn't they just know who he was?
Yeah, that's good question too. Good question too. There are no secrets in what happens here. And that is a part of what you find is that, they capture him at night. They have these trials by night. And of course, darkness is chaos. Darkness is evil. And so there is this notion that they're trying to cover up what they do, but Jesus is not trying to hide anything and is not ashamed of anything. I mean, we'll get later on in the trials, Jesus saying, I taught this stuff every day in the temple. Why are you acting like this is some sort of surprise? He's not being secretive in what he's teaching or what he's saying, but that's not enough. That they're still trying to hide it along the way. Dennis, and then I got a few hands coming here.
Is it in John where it's pronounced that the devil entered Judas?
Yes.
It was
Yeah.
John.
Yeah. I think so. We don't find the devil kind of entering into the dialogue as much in Matthew. That is true. It's John. Rick.
I think there were a lot of aha moments for me in Israel. One of the biggest ones were if you're actually sitting on the Mount of Olives in the Garden of Gethsemane, Jesus clearly would have seen this crowd leave the Temple Mount, go through the valley, 10 minutes, 15 minutes,
Right.
would have seen this whole thing transpire for them to get
So it's not like they're hiding behind a building and then pop out or something. There is no right. They got to go down through a valley. I mean, this is all very clear.
And his safety spot was 2 miles to the east, back in Bethany. He could have easily gone the other way if he wanted.
Right. So again, there's no kind of secrets here. Yes.
I was thinking that Judas probably was telling the priests and the elders, I know this guy personally.
Right.
He's one of my very closest friends. I know exactly where he is. And I'll go up there and he's expressing that knowledge of his fellowship.
Intimate knowledge. Yep.
By that kiss.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And again, so that there can be no question of his identification. Yes. Howard. And then George.
I think the reason this happened is because Jesus came and he was the only one without sin in all the world.
Sure.
Sin covers everyone, and it's massive.
Yeah. Oh, right. Absolutely. And again, throughout the Passion, you see these events that are going to take place that are the opposite of how Jesus behaved. in his life and ministry. So he teaches in public. They take him in secret. They try to in a little while they try to trip him up with lies. He keeps silent. There's just all this contrast that happens over and over and over again. George.
You emphasize great crowd, being a stickler for detail. There's no no communication going on, no cell phones, whatever. How did they develop such a great crowd, and how did they get the word?
That's a great question. That is, seriously. And if nothing else, that demonstrates a serious amount of forethought and planning that happens, right? Because they're not just going on their phone and saying, okay, everybody meet here for the great betrayal at 6 a.m. or whatever. Yeah, that's a very good point, George. That demonstrates the amount of forethought, planning, everything that goes into this. That this is not an accidental event. This is not, and we kind of get that sense a little bit later when the chief priests and the elders stir up the people. Not this man, but Barabbas. That they want it to look like it's a spontaneous event, but it's not. It's very public, start to finish. Yeah, good point. All right, so Jesus, even here, notice what he calls what he calls Judas. Calls him friend. Friend. That's I'm not looking at the Greek, but I'm pretty confident that word would be the fillet, not fillet like a fillet of fish, but like phileo, like Philadelphia's city of brotherly love. So friend, I think, is probably connected to brother there. Yeah, Pastor.
That communication in crowds without cell phones.
Yes.
And the forethought is back in the days of rioting because we didn't like a certain police action that was going on, we always salted crowds with people that we met with the day before.
Mm-hmm.
So that someone would say to their associate that they're with what to do.
Right.
It was pre-orchestrated that way.
Right.
That's how you do it without a cell phone.
Mob Psychology 101. Why am I not surprised you know about this? Not quite sure what to make of that. But yeah, and again, and you see this later in the Passion with the chief priests and the rulers kind of talking to the crowd, getting them worked up so that they will do their bidding. Yeah. Then they came and laid hands on Jesus and seized him. And here we get one of those who were with Jesus. Elsewhere we learn who the one of those is, right? It's Peter. But here he's not singled out. It's just one of those who were with him struck the servant of the high priest and cut off his ear. A couple pictures there. That's what I would call entering someone else's personal space. Right? That's pretty close there.
Peter's got a short sword in his hand.
Yep, sure does. Sure does. And obviously this is late medieval, 14th century. So it's not trying to do realistic time there, but you definitely get the sense of a crowd with this painting, and you get the sense of opposition. That's that, because if you look carefully at it, I'm not sure how much you can tell on the screen, but the thing that really grabs me in looking at it is the eyes of all of the people who are looking at Jesus. That that they are not, that they are very focused on him. I mean, and even look at Judas. They're like this far apart. They are eye to eye. And this is a terrible analogy, which I'm sure I'm going to regret instantly. But that does kind of make me think of a movie like Rocky III. You know, and every boxing movie has the scene where the two guys are just kind of nose to nose, seeing who's going to blink first. That's a little bit of the picture there, but you can definitely see that Judas has grabbed him, and that the crowd is surrounding Jesus. I mean, we see a couple, and here's the sword and the ear, and there goes the ear, exactly. Which makes me think of another boxer. Eric.
What's with the horn guy?
I don't know. I saw that too. You know, over here. That's a shofar. It's a horn. I don't know, other than getting people's attention on where they're to go or something.
That's a medieval cell phone.
That's a medieval cell phone. There we go. There's your answer, George. I know it. They use the shofar. Yeah.
So is the one in the red one of the priests?
This looks like a soldier to me. That looks like a Roman.
Pinkish red.
Oh, is it here?
Yes.
Maybe, I don't know. And again, remembering that when we're talking about medieval art, they weren't going for, okay, I'm going to study what the first century priestly garb was going to look like. They're looking at their neighbors and kind of using contemporaries as models.
So it looks like a chasuble.
Yeah, it does. That does kind of make you curious, doesn't it? Andy.
I was wondering about the shofar too, and I was wondering if maybe it was the idea that whether or not they felt it was presented, the mob mentality was one of righteous indignation, but it's almost like that because that's the only time the shofar is usually used, isn't it? Is during some kind of religious ceremonies, or is it to alert and call people?
Yeah, it's certainly a religious instrument, for sure. Yeah, lots of interesting stuff in there. Here's another one. This is another 14th century one. Yep, and here you can see spears and torches. Here's Peter cutting off this guy's ear. And notice, who do we have here? This is where all the disciples are fleeing. And notice that Peter does not have a nimbus or a halo, which is I think quite interesting.
And one other one doesn't either. On the right.
Over here?
Yeah.
I think this is Judas. This is Judas right here. But yeah, so there's a few interesting kind of pieces to that along the way. So again, Peter is not acting out of faith here. This is a guess on my part, but I'm pretty confident on this guess that this, because Peter is not acting out of faith but out of fear here, is why he does not have the halo or nimbus. That's my guess. Yeah, another 14th century. All right, let's move on. Then Jesus said to him, "Put your sword back into its place, for all who take the sword will perish by the sword. Do you think that I cannot appeal to my Father, and he will at once send me more than 12 legions of angels? But how then should the scripture be fulfilled that it must be so?" Now, there are a couple of kind of key things there. How many are in a legion? 1,000 is a legion. And so 12 legions of angels, I think the technical term for that would be a lot of angels. Yeah. And so if I wanted to have 12,000 angels here, I could do that. This isn't about that. So, Barbara.
It always seemed unfair to me that he kept the servant's ear off. Why not the high priest?
Why not the high priest? Well, the high priest presumably wasn't there. So.
Yeah, but wait a minute, in Peter's defense, he wasn't a swordsman, he was a disciple.
Yeah. Well, I think, I mean, he is identified as Peter in the other Gospels. So I think that is an interesting dilemma that you kind of run into in these Gospels sometimes. Is in Matthew, who it is doesn't matter. In Matthew, what matters is that one of his disciples is going to try to answer this by violence, and it gets nowhere. And this is not the point. So to live by the sword means to die by the sword. So if I wanted help, I could get help. But again, this is Jesus' humiliation, is that he willingly sets aside his glory, his honor, his power for the sake of the salvation of the world. So that's the contrast that we get there.
This is the second time that he's admonished Peter.
Yeah, at least. Yeah. Brian.
I think it's interesting that he said he could appeal to his father to send angels, but he had just appealed to him to take and he didn't do it.
Right. Yeah, he said he could, and with both with his prayer and here, the question is not one of ability or capacity or whatever. The question or the point is that that's not the will of the Father, or therefore my own will at this point. Yeah. And this is really a rabbit trail, but it's worth observing that sometimes going the route of power is not the right thing to do. Even if in the short term you get what you want. It's always tempting to go that way because that seems like the easiest line to follow, right? Is to go by way of power. But it may be that there is something else that is more important than getting what you want. Again, that's deep thoughts with Pastor Peperkorn. Yeah,
that was the temptation that the devil had with Jesus in the wilderness is show your power.
Right.
Reveal yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Over and over and over again, he is tempted to reveal his glory and lose the salvation of the world as a result. And I do wonder sometimes when you're thinking about the image of loving one's neighbor does not lend itself to just thinking in terms of power. It doesn't. It's very tempting. It doesn't. George.
Looking at that scene, one further back when it showed the mob with swords and clubs and so forth, I have to think of the mentality of these people at that time. Here's a man that Jesus that has brought people back from the dead, cured lepers, cured disease. You want to beat this man to death?
Yeah. Well, and we get this in all of the Gospels that the people who know are the ones who flee. Knowing something is not the same as trust. And so while at one level we can look at this and think, yeah, if I had been there, I would not have done that. But I would argue that all of the Gospels, all of these passion narratives point to the fact that everyone played a part. That there was no one that was innocent except Jesus himself. And so even passively doing nothing is doing something, right? So that's the contrast. But yeah, it is remarkable because again, 3 years. This is all public. There's no secrets. He's not hiding things. Dennis.
Just where in the Gospels does it talk about him saying, "I am he," and they all fall back? Is it with
That's John.
That's also John.
That's also John.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, in John, there's no kiss.
Yeah, John. It is an interesting process kind of comparing the passion narrative of one of the synoptics, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, because there are just a whole different set of details than what we get. So, if you couldn't hear, he asked about the, who do you seek? Jesus of Nazareth, I am he. And then immediately they fell back and they get up and he says, who do you seek? They say Jesus of Nazareth. It happens again. And so again, there's no question that he has the power. That's not the issue. The issue is how does he use it? And there, he uses it only to save his disciples. But here, as we'll see in a moment, the disciples simply flee. They are not saved, not in that sense in this part of the story. Howard.
Yeah, if you want to take a look at what's going on there, you have to look at who has the power.
Yeah.
Jesus has the most power, but it's hidden.
It's hidden.
Satan
has the power. Yeah, you got it.
Less than Christ, but he has the whole human race.
But his is overt. His is out front, and is able to be seen.
And Christ is planning to take all of the followers of Satan because of sin away from him. Forgiveness for the whole world.
But not doing it with power.
Right.
Like everybody else presumes. That's really the key. There was a hand up over here. Barbara.
As to how they could attack Jesus after he'd done all these miracles and raised people from the dead. A lot of people then thought the way he did that was he had the power of the devil.
That's right.
And so they wanted to destroy him because he was of the devil.
Yeah, that's that argument was made on more than one occasion. That because you cast out demons because you're a demon, essentially. And Jesus' answer to that is, why would a demon cast out himself? But just because something is illogical, that does not prevent people from believing it. Far from it. Couple more here, just to take a quick peek. So once again, in this one, notice a couple differences. One, Peter has a nimbus, has a halo in this one. And it kind of looks like he's shaving him. That looks more like a straight razor to me than a sword. But,
Pastor, I have always imagined in my mind that if I were Peter, I would be going for the guy that's got his hand on Jesus.
Right.
Not some dude
not
standing
some
on the
servant
sidelines.
guy. Yeah, it doesn't really make a lot of sense there. I agree. Notice here that Jesus' hand is in benediction. I don't know how much you can see that on the board there, but there's that sense there that he is speaking peace, even in the midst of violence and bloodshed. At that hour, Jesus said to the crowds, "Have you come out as against a robber with swords and clubs to capture me? Day after day I sat in the temple teaching, and you did not seize me. But all this has taken place that the scriptures of the prophets might be fulfilled." Then all the disciples left him and fled. So he highlights to the crowds. So again, he's talking to the people that came to capture him with the soldiers, and just pointing their hypocrisy out to them. That they are acting like this is some sort of drug bust in the middle of the night or something, but and that he is not a public. He's a preacher. He's not hiding anything. But they did not do it then, because these happen at night in darkness. Then all the disciples left him and fled. I would think it would be all the crowds that would have left and fled at that point. But no, it's the disciples that at this point are gone. They disappear from the story, from the scene. Yeah, let's go back to that. Yeah, that and I don't think that might there, that the scriptures of the prophets might be, it doesn't mean might, but might not. But it rather means so that. Yeah. But all this had taken place so that the scriptures would be fulfilled. Yeah, don't take might as they have a chance of being fulfilled or something. This isn't a gamble that he's taking here. Then all the disciples left him and fled. Then those who had seized Jesus led him to Caiaphas, the high priest, where the scribes and the elders had gathered. So there's a little bit of a Jordan cell phone question. Is that this takes place at the home of the high priest. Peter was following him at a distance, as far as the courtyard of the high priest, and going inside, he sat with the guards to see the end. Now the chief priests and the whole council were seeking false testimony against Jesus, that they might put him to death. But they found none, though many false witnesses came forward. At last, two came forward and said, "This man said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and to rebuild it in 3 days." He's seized, he's taken to Caiaphas, the high priest, and Peter is following. He's kind of in the wings, wants to know what's happening, but doesn't want to get too close, as it were. It is remarkable that they seek false testimony against Jesus. And the reason is that is literally against one of the commandments, right? You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor. And so they are doing precisely the opposite of what their own laws say they are to do. And this is what I guess we could call a greater good argument, right? That in their minds Jesus was so dangerous to the Jews that it was worthwhile for them to break their own laws to serve some greater purpose of eliminating him, so that the people would be safe. I mean, that's kind of the argument along the way. Finally, they get two false witnesses, and notice this false testimony, these false witnesses, what they say is true. Jesus did say this, right? But that's not all Jesus said. This is kind of the essence of a false testimony, is to hold on to as much of the truth as possible so that the lie can be slipped in. This man said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and to rebuild it in 3 days. Well, he did say that. So that's not wrong. That's just not the point. This is the earliest image I could find of Jesus before Caiaphas. So this is a mosaic from the 6th century, so 500s, in Ravenna, and you can kind of see Jesus again as he's dressed as a rabbi, he's dressed as a teacher, and he is testifying, and we've got the one guy to Jesus' right that is pointing to him. I don't know if that's the false testimony. This man said, that would make sense to me, but I don't know. I couldn't get enough of the history of this art piece to be able to answer that one for you. But yeah. I think I'm going to stop there because we've been on a roll, which is great, but I want to be able to, so we will restart at 62 next week, and with Jesus' answer there along the way. Any final questions for everyone? I think we're good. We'll close with the benediction. The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you all. Amen. Thank you, everyone.